Okay, so let's look at some typical mistakes with modal verbs. There are a lot of mistakes with modal verbs because modal verbs aren't easy. They don't necessarily function logically. They don't always function as you would expect them to function. For a start, you want to separate modals of obligation, which are verbs like must and have to, and don't have to and mustn't. And I actually recommend separating those from modals of deduction, which might refer to the present, might refer to the past, and might even refer to the future, although that is rare. Nonetheless, it does happen sometimes. But let's look at some common mistakes. So it's Sunday, so I mustn't work. And sometimes they make two mistakes and they say mustn't to work, which is always incorrect, yeah? I've got it actually down here. I might to join you later. Let's quickly just get rid of that too. You often hear students say, I can't to arrive before 9 or something like that. Not can't to arrive. Can't arrive, might join, mustn't work. Modal verb and infinitive, please. Always. That's always the case. And so that would certainly be a mistake, but here let's assume that the student hasn't made that mistake and has just said it's Sunday so I mustn't work. Well, that's really odd because mustn't means you're not allowed to work. And are you really not allowed? I mean, would the boss get really angry if you went in and worked anyway on a Sunday? Well, maybe in some situations, maybe. And in those situations, maybe you can use mustn't, but most of the time you need to say don't have to or don't need to. And don't have to and don't need to are pretty much the same. I think don't have to is far more common. But this means there's no obligation. This means illegal or against the rules, not allowed. It means not allowed. But you are allowed to work. You can work if you want to. Yeah, just nobody's going to pay you for it. And so it's much better to use this one. It's Sunday, so I don't have to work. And very often students also say shouldn't instead of don't have to. And shouldn't is also wrong. Yeah, it's Sunday, so I shouldn't work. That's not correct. And it's because shouldn't is you're saying it's a bad idea or a good idea. Yeah, it's advice. But you're not giving advice here. You're stating an obligation. You're stating that there is no obligation to work. And no obligation to work means don't have to work. Yeah, it's the same thing. I don't have to work. I have no obligation to work. Mustn't is not allowed to work. And we don't mean that. And so do be aware of this other verb that we very often use with obligations. When you are allowed to do something, you have permission to do something. So that's also possible, yeah. But here it will be, I don't have to work, not mustn't, not most of the time anyway. You only say mustn't, that means you'll be punished if you work. And that's very rare. Okay, so number 2, there are lots of places to eat. Somebody was describing the city centre, the town, where she lived. And she said, you shouldn't look for a restaurant for a long time. Now, again, this should or shouldn't is used for advice. When you say you shouldn't, you're saying it's a bad idea, mate. Don't do it. Yeah, and so what you're saying here is don't look for a restaurant for a long time. It's a bad idea. But that's not what the student wanted to say. The student wanted to say there are lots of places to eat. So there is no need, no obligation to look for a restaurant for a long time. So here we need don't have to. You don't